The once mighty Deltan Confederation crumbles before the onslaught of the Zorn hegemony. Everyone laughed at the humans until their fleet joined the Deltan army. Admiral Aura stands rigid on the bridge of her battered flagship, jaw clenched as she watches the Zorn fleet tear through the remnants of the Deltan Defense Force. Explosions bloom silently in the void of space, each one representing countless lives lost. The Admiral's fingers hover over the console, hesitating for a split second before she activates the long-range distress beacon. This is Admiral Aura of the Deltan Confederation. Our forces are overwhelmed. We request immediate assistance from any allied powers in range. This is our final stand. The message echoes across the galaxy, bouncing between relay stations and penetrating the vast emptiness of space. For agonizing minutes, there is no response. Then a crackle of static breaks the silence. This is Captain David Ramos of the Earth Starship Defiant. We've intercepted your distress call and are en route to investigate. Aura's antenna twitch in surprise. Earth? That primitive backwater barely known to the galactic community? She has no time to ponder this unexpected development as a Zorn battlecruiser bears down on her position. At the edge of Deltan space, the Defiant drops out of warp, immediately encountering a Zorn patrol. Despite being vastly outgunned, Captain Ramos doesn't hesitate. Evasive maneuvers. Bring us in close and prepare for a slingshot around their lead ship. The human vessel dances between enemy fire, its superior maneuverability allowing it to close the distance rapidly. As they swing around the Zorn ship, Ramos barks out orders. Fire all port batteries. Target their engines and weapon systems. The Defiant unleashes a devastating barrage, crippling the Zorn vessel before it can react. The remaining patrol ships move to engage, but Ramos is already 2 steps ahead. He uses the disabled ship as cover, picking off the others one by one with precision strikes. The skirmish catches the attention of both fleets. Admiral Aura, watching the battle unfold on her tactical display, feels a flicker of hope for the first time in months. She opens a channel to the human ship. Captain Ramos, this is Admiral Aura. Your assistance is unexpected but appreciated. I invite you to join me aboard my flagship for a strategic meeting. Ramos accepts and soon finds himself face-to-face with the Deltan High Command. The atmosphere is tense, filled with skepticism and desperation in equal measure. The captain outlines his plan, explaining how Earth's advanced warp drive technology could turn the tide of the war. With our ability to execute micro-jumps within a battle space, we can outmaneuver the Zorn fleet and strike at their weak points, Ramos argues passionately. The Deltan commanders scoff, dismissing the humans as primitive newcomers to interstellar travel. But Admiral Aura sees the fire in Ramos's eyes, the determination that mirrors her own. She silences the protest with a raised hand. We have no other options, she declares. Captain Ramos, I'm assigning you a small task force. Prove the worth of your technology and tactics. As Ramos leaves to prepare his crew, news of the human involvement spreads like wildfire. Other alien races in the sector take notice, some intrigued by the potential of this upstart species, others viewing them as a threat to the established order. Aboard the Zorn command ship, the Supreme Commander receives word of the new player in this conflict. His mandibles click in anticipation as he issues new orders. Capture the human vessel. We must study their technology and assess their threat level. Back on the Defiant, Captain Ramos addresses his crew. The weight of responsibility settles on his shoulders, not just for the fate of the Deltans, but for humanity's place in the galactic community. As they prepare for their first major engagement against the Zorn fleet, Ramos knows that everything hangs in the balance. The laughter directed at humanity is about to turn into stunned silence. As the Defiant prepared for its first major engagement, Captain Ramos gathered his crew and the commanders of the Deltan Task Force in the ship's briefing room. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Ladies and gentlemen, Ramos began, his voice steady and confident. Today we introduce a game-changing tactic that will level the playing field against the Zorn. He activated a holographic display, showing a detailed map of the nearby star system. Earth's advanced warp drive technology allows for precise micro-jumps within a solar system. We'll use this capability to execute a series of hit-and-run attacks on a Zorn supply depot. The Deltan officers exchanged skeptical glances, but Admiral Aura nodded for Ramos to continue. "We'll appear, strike hard, and vanish before they can react," Ramos explained, demonstrating the maneuver with his hands. "This tactic will confuse and disorient the Zorn defenders, giving us a significant advantage." As the briefing concluded, the task force moved into position. The Defiant led the charge, its warp drive humming with energy. Ramos stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "All ships, prepare for micro-jump on my mark," he ordered. 3, 2, 1, execute. In a flash of light, the Defiant vanished, reappearing moments later behind a Zorn frigate. "Fire all weapons," Ramos commanded. The ship's batteries unleashed a devastating barrage, crippling the Zorn vessel before it could react. The Deltan ships, following Ramos's lead, adopted the tactic with surprising speed. They blinked in and out of existence, striking Zorn ships from unexpected angles and disappearing before retaliatory fire could find its mark. Aboard the Zorn command ship, chaos reigned. "Where are they coming from?" the Zorn commander bellowed, his mandibles clicking furiously. "How are they moving so quickly?" As the battle raged, a Zorn boarding party managed to latch onto one of the Deltan cruisers. Ramos saw an opportunity. "Prepare a counterboarding team," he ordered. "I'm leading this one myself." Moments later, Ramos and a squad of human soldiers transported onto the Deltan ship. They moved swiftly through the corridors, encountering Zorn warriors in close-quarters combat. The humans' adaptability and hand-to-hand skills caught the Zorn off guard. Ramos ducked under a Zorn warrior's sweeping claw, countering with a swift uppercut that sent the alien reeling. His team fought with a coordination that impressed even the Deltan crew members. As they pushed deeper into the ship, Ramos spotted a Zorn officer barking orders. "That's our high-value target," he whispered to his team. "Take him alive if possible." With a coordinated assault, the human team overwhelmed the Zorn officer's guards. Ramos himself tackled the alien, using his smaller size and agility to his advantage. After a brief struggle, the Zorn officer found himself disarmed and restrained. "Secure the prisoner and fall back to the Defiant," Ramos ordered, tapping his communicator. "We've got what we came for." As the battle wound down, the extent of their victory became clear. The Zorn supply depot was in ruins, its defenders scattered or destroyed. The Deltan ships, adopting Earth's tactics, had suffered minimal losses. Back on the Deltan flagship, Admiral Aura reviewed the after-action reports with growing excitement. "Captain Ramos," she said, turning to the human officer, "your tactics have exceeded all expectations. I believe it's time we fully embraced Earth's military innovations." Ramos nodded, but before he could respond, a junior officer burst into the room. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the sector. News of our victory is spreading rapidly." Aura's antennae twitched with satisfaction. "Good. Let the galaxy see what we can accomplish together." Meanwhile, deep in Zorn territory, the Supreme Commander received word of the defeat. His eyes narrowed with rage as he reviewed the battle footage. "These humans," he hissed. "They are more dangerous than we anticipated." He turned to his subordinates. "Prepare the fleet. We will crush the Deltan homeworld before these humans can further influence the war." As preparations for the defense of the Deltan homeworld began, Ramos found himself navigating treacherous political waters. Some Deltan officers, threatened by the human's success, whispered in corridors and gave him cold stares. "Watch your back, human," a grizzled Deltan captain warned him in passing. "Not everyone here appreciates your assistance." Ramos ignored the hostility, focusing instead on the upcoming battle. He and Admiral Aura spent long hours poring over star charts and fleet deployments, formulating a strategy that combined human ingenuity with Deltan strength. Unbeknownst to them, a Zorn Special Operations team, led by the infamous Commander Kraz, was already en route to the Deltan homeworld. Their mission, to infiltrate and sabotage the newly implemented human technologies. As Kraz's stealth ship slipped past the outer defenses, the Zorn commander allowed himself a predatory smile. "Soon," he thought, "we will see just how fragile this human-Deltan alliance truly is." The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. As Ramos retired to his quarters aboard the Defiant, He couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of humanity's place among the stars was yet to come. As Ramos settled into his quarters, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Captain to the bridge. Urgent situation developing." He sprinted through the corridors, arriving on the bridge to find chaos unfolding on the main view screen. "Report," he barked, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. "Sir, we've detected multiple breaches in the Delton Capital's security grid," his XO explained. "Signs point to a covert Zorn infiltration team." Ramos's face hardened. "Alert Admiral Aura immediately. We need to mobilize a strike team." Within minutes, Ramos found himself in a secure briefing room with Admiral Aura and a mix of human and Deltan officers. The atmosphere was tense as they reviewed the incoming data. "The Zorn are targeting our new defense systems," Aura said, her antennae twitching with agitation. "If they succeed, we'll be defenseless against their main assault." Ramos nodded grimly. "We need to deploy a joint strike force. My Marines, combined with your special forces, can root out these infiltrators before they cause irreparable damage." As they finalized the plans, alarms blared throughout the city. The Zorn had begun their attack, striking at power substations and communication hubs with surgical precision. On the streets of the Deltan capital, chaos reigned. Civilians fled in panic as explosions rocked the city's skyline. Through this mayhem, a team of human Marines and Deltan special forces moved with purpose, led by Ramos himself. "Alpha Team, secure the western power grid," Ramos ordered through his comm link. "Bravo, with me. We're heading for the central command hub." The joint strike force moved like a well-oiled machine, human and Deltan soldiers covering each other as they navigated the war-torn streets. They encountered their first group of Zorn saboteurs at a major intersection, the aliens' chitinous armor gleaming in the fires of destroyed vehicles. "Contact front," a Deltan soldier shouted, diving for cover behind an overturned transport. Ramos and his team reacted instantly, laying down suppressing fire as they maneuvered to flank the Zorn position. The firefight was intense but brief, the combined tactics of the humans and Deltans overwhelming the Zorn infiltrators. As they pushed deeper into the city, Ramos couldn't help but admire the seamless integration of their forces. The Deltans' natural agility complemented the humans' adaptability, creating a formidable fighting unit. Back at Deltan High Command, Admiral Aura faced a different kind of battle. Vice Admiral Thax and his supporters had called an emergency session of the War Council. "This human interference has brought nothing but destruction to our world," Thax argued, his voice rising above the murmurs of agreement from his faction. "We must sue for peace with the Zorn before it's too late." Aura stood firm, her eyes blazing with tenacity. "The humans have given us a fighting chance. Surrender now, and we condemn our people to generations of Zorn oppression." The debate raged on, with more and more council members swaying towards Thax's position as reports of the Zorn's destructive advance filtered in. In orbit above the Deltan homeworld, the situation grew dire. The massive Zorn armada had emerged from hyperspace, thousands of warships blotting out the stars. Panic spread through the Deltan fleet as the sheer scale of the invasion force became apparent. Aboard the Defiant, Chief Engineer Sarah Chen worked feverishly to implement Ramos's daring strategy. Her team raced against time to modify Deltan ships with the warp technology necessary to create the micro-wormhole network. "Reroute power from the auxiliary systems," Chen ordered, her hands flying over the control panels. "We need every ounce of energy for the warp field generators." As Chen and her team pushed the limits of their technology, Ramos led a small task force to engage the Zorn vanguard. The human-led ships darted in and out of the Zorn formation, striking with precision before disappearing in flashes of light. On the bridge of the Zorn flagship, the Supreme Commander snarled in frustration. "These human tactics are delaying our advance. Adjust our formation to counter their hit-and-run attacks." The Zorn fleet began to spread out, forced to move more cautiously in response to the humans' harassing maneuvers. Unbeknownst to them, every minute gained was crucial for the defenders. Back in the Deltan capital, the urban combat reached its climax. Ramos and his strike team had cornered the remaining Zorn infiltrators, including their leader, Commander Kraz, in a fortified government building. "Breach charges set," a human Marine reported. "Ready on your order, sir." Ramos nodded, his pulse quickening. Execute. The charges detonated, and the joint human-Deltan force surged through the breach. They were met with a hail of Zorn energy weapons, the air filling with the acrid smell of ozone and burning metal. As the firefight intensified, Ramos caught a glimpse of Commander Kraz, directing his forces from behind a makeshift barricade. The Zorn commander's eyes locked with Ramos's, a moment of recognition passing between two skilled adversaries. The battle hung in the balance, with the fate of the Deltan homeworld resting on three fronts: the space battle against the Zorn Armada, the political struggle within Deltan High Command, and the final push to neutralize the Zorn saboteurs. As Ramos ducked behind cover, narrowly avoiding a barrage of Zorn fire, he knew that the next few moments would determine the course of the war, and perhaps the future of the galaxy itself. Ramos gritted his teeth as another volley of Zorn fire streaked past the Defiant. The ship shuddered, its shields flickering under the assault. "Status report!" he barked, eyes locked on the tactical display. "Shields at 62%, Captain," his XO replied. "The Zorn Vanguard is pushing hard, but our hit-and-run tactics are slowing their advance." Ramos nodded grimly. Every second they bought was precious, but the cost was mounting. He opened a channel to engineering. "Chen, how's our warp drive holding up?" Chief Engineer Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the comm, strained but determined. "We're pushing it to the limit, Captain. These micro-jumps are taxing the system, but I've got my team working on a way to increase efficiency." "Good work. Keep it up," Ramos said, closing the channel. He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare for another jump. Target the Zorn heavy cruiser at Sector 7. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements fluid despite the tension. In a flash of light, the Defiant vanished, reappearing moments later behind the massive Zorn vessel. Their weapons blazed, striking a critical blow before they blinked away again. On the Zorn flagship, the Supreme Commander snarled in frustration. "These human tactics are infuriating. Spread out the fleet, don't give them easy targets." As the Zorn Armada began to disperse, Ramos allowed himself a small smile. Their plan was working, but he knew it was only a temporary advantage. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Deltan homeworld, the urban combat had reached its zenith. Marine Sergeant Jack Harper led his mixed team of humans and Deltans through the rubble-strewn streets towards the government building where Commander Kraz and his Zorn infiltrators had barricaded themselves. "Alpha Team, move up," Harper ordered, gesturing to a group of Deltan Special Forces. They advanced swiftly, their energy weapons at the ready. A hail of Zorn fire erupted from the upper floors of the building, forcing the team into cover. Harper cursed under his breath, then tapped his comm. "Bravo team, we need suppressing fire on the 3rd and 4th floors." The air filled with the distinctive whine of human and Deltan weapons as Bravo team opened fire. Harper seized the opportunity, leading his squad in a dash towards the building's entrance. "Breach charges set," a human Marine reported, placing the explosive on the reinforced door. Harper nodded. "Execute!" The door exploded inward, and the Joint Strike Force surged through the opening. They encountered fierce resistance immediately, Zorn energy bolts sizzling past them as they fought their way deeper into the structure. Room by room, floor by floor, they pushed forward. The close-quarters combat favored the humans' adaptability and the Deltans' agility. Harper watched with pride as his team worked in perfect synchronization, covering each other and eliminating Zorn resistance with ruthless efficiency. Finally, they cornered Commander Kraz and his remaining operatives in a fortified command center. The Zorn commander's eyes blazed with hatred as he faced the human sergeant. "Surrender now!" Harper demanded, his weapon trained on Kraz. "It's over!" For a moment it seemed Kraz might fight to the bitter end. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. "You've won this battle, human. But the war is far from finished." As Harper moved to secure Kraz, his comm crackled to life. "Sergeant, this is Captain Ramos. We've got a situation up here." Harper frowned, hearing the tension in Ramos's voice. "Go ahead, sir." "Vice Admiral Thax has staged a coup. He's arrested Admiral Aura and is attempting to surrender to the Zorn. We need you to free Aura and restore her to command." The news hit Harper like a physical blow. "Understood, sir. We'll move out immediately." As Harper's team secured the Zorn prisoners and prepared to move, the political situation in orbit deteriorated rapidly. Vice Admiral Thax, now self-declared leader of the Deltan Confederation, broadcast his message of surrender across all channels. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Deltan ships began breaking formation, their crews confused and demoralized. The carefully planned wormhole defense network began to falter as key vessels abandoned their positions. Aboard the Defiant, Ramos watched in horror as the defensive line crumbled. He knew he had to act fast to salvage the situation. "XO, you have the bridge," he ordered. "I'm leading a team to free Admiral Aura. We need to put an end to this coup before it's too late." As Ramos prepared to depart, Chief Engineer Chen's voice came over the comm. "Captain, I've got an idea. If we position the Defiant at the center of the wormhole network, we might be able to stabilize it using our warp drive." Ramos paused, considering the risks. "Do it, but be ready to pull out at a moment's notice. We can't lose the ship." With a heavy heart, Ramos left the Defiant in Chen's capable hands and boarded a shuttle with a small team of Marines. As they descended towards the Deltan capital, he could see the chaos unfolding below. The Zorn Supreme Commander, sensing victory, ordered his fleet to press their advantage. The massive armada surged forward, overwhelming the disorganized Deltan defenses. On the surface, Harper's team fought their way through the streets, now filled with confused civilians and Thax's loyalist forces. They encountered heavy resistance as they approached the detention center where Admiral Aura was being held. "Push forward," Harper shouted, leading his team through a hail of energy bolts. They were running out of time, and he knew it. As the battle raged on multiple fronts, the fate of the Deltan homeworld hung in the balance. The actions of a few key individuals in the next few moments would determine the outcome of not just this conflict, but potentially the future of human-Deltan relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. As Ramos's shuttle descended towards the Deltan capital, the chaos unfolding below mirrored the turmoil in orbit. The streets were a maze of confused civilians and clashing loyalist forces. Ramos knew time was running out. Suddenly, his comm crackled to life. "Captain, this is Chen. We've stabilized the wormhole network using the Defiant's warp drive. It's working, but I don't know for how long." Ramos allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "Outstanding work, Chen. Hold that position as long as you can." No sooner had he acknowledged Chen's report than another transmission came through, this time from Admiral Aura herself. Her voice was strained but resolute. "This is Admiral Aura to all Deltan forces. Vice Admiral Thax's actions are nothing short of treason. He does not speak for the Deltan Confederation. I order all ships to return to formation immediately." The effect was instantaneous. Ramos watched from his view screen as Deltan ships that had broken ranks began to regroup. The defensive line, which had been on the verge of collapse, started to reform, but the battle was a long way to go. As Ramos's shuttle touched down near the detention center, he saw Harper's team engaged in a fierce firefight with Thax's loyalists. "Sergeant," Ramos called out, ducking behind a fallen pillar. "What's your status?" Harper fired off a burst from his rifle before responding. "We're pinned down, sir. Thax's men are dug in tight. We can't reach the Admiral." Ramos assessed the situation quickly. "I've got an idea. Cover me!" As Harper's team laid down suppressing fire, Ramos sprinted across the open ground, sliding into cover beside a Deltan soldier. He grabbed the soldier's comm unit and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention, Thax loyalists. This is Captain David Ramos of the Earth Defense Force. Your coup has failed. Admiral Aura is back in command, and the Deltan fleet is reforming as we speak. Lay down your weapons now, or face the consequences." For a moment, the gunfire intensified. Then slowly it began to taper off. One by one, Thax's men emerged from their positions, hands raised in surrender. As Harper's team secured the prisoners, Ramos rushed into the detention center. He found Admiral Aura in a cell, her uniform disheveled but her spirit unbroken. "Captain Ramos," she said, a hint of a smile on her face, "your timing is impeccable." "We're not out of the woods yet, Admiral," Ramos replied, helping her to her feet. "We need to get you to the command center." But as they exited the building, Ramos's comm unit buzzed urgently. It was his XO aboard the Defiant. "Captain, we've got a problem. Thax is making a move. He's contacted the Zorn Supreme Commander, offering to sabotage our wormhole network in exchange for his own safety. Ramos felt his blood run cold. He turned to Admiral Aura, who had heard the transmission. "We need to stop him," Aura said, her voice hard with persistence. "If he succeeds, all is lost." Ramos nodded, his mind racing. "I'll deploy my Marines to protect the key network nodes. Admiral, can you rally your loyalist forces to counter Thax's saboteurs?" "Consider it done, Captain." As Aura hurried to the command center, Ramos began issuing rapid-fire orders. Within minutes, teams of human Marines were being dispatched to critical installations across the Deltan defense perimeter. In orbit, the space battle had reached a fever pitch. The Defiant, under Chen's command, performed a dizzying series of maneuvers, maintaining the integrity of the wormhole network while evading Zorn fire. Commander Michael Torres, coordinating with Admiral Aura, implemented a new hybrid strategy. Deltan battlecruisers formed their traditional crescent formation, while nimble human fighters darted between them, striking at Zorn weak points. The Zorn Supreme Commander, watching his carefully laid plans unravel, snarled in frustration. "Concentrate all fire on the human ship. Destroy it, and their defense will crumble." The Defiant shuddered under the increased assault. In engineering, Sarah Chen worked feverishly, rerouting power and patching systems. "Shields at 30%, her assistant called out. "We can't take much more of this." Chen gritted her teeth. "Divert power from life support if you have to. We hold this position." On the Deltan homeworld, Sergeant Harper led his mixed human Deltan team through the streets of the capital. They moved swiftly from building to building, engaging Zorn infiltrators in intense close-quarters combat. "Contact left," a Deltan soldier shouted. Harper spun, his rifle spitting fire. The Zorn infiltrator fell, its attempt to access a nearby defense terminal thwarted. "Good eye," Harper nodded to the Deltan. "Let's keep moving. We need to secure the main control hub." As they approached the hub, Harper's team encountered heavy resistance. Zorn energy bolts sizzled through the air, forcing them into cover. "Flashbangs out," Harper ordered. The disorienting explosions gave them the opening they needed. They surged forward, their combined firepower overwhelming the Zorn defenders. In orbit, the tide of battle was shifting. The Zorn fleet, so certain of victory mere hours ago, now found itself on the defensive. The hybrid human-Deltan tactics were proving devastatingly effective. Suddenly, the Defiant sensors lit up. A massive fleet of ships had just entered the system. "Captain," Chen called out, her voice tight with excitement, "you're not going to believe this." Ramos, still coordinating ground operations, felt his heart skip a beat. "What is it, Chief?" "Sir, it's the Earth fleet. They're here." As the human reinforcements launched their surprise attack on the Zorn's rear flank, the entire dynamics of the battle shifted. The Zorn Supreme Commander, caught completely off guard, struggled to reorient his forces. Amidst the chaos, a single Deltan cruiser broke away from the fleet, attempting to flee the system. It was Vice Admiral Thax making a desperate bid for escape, but he hadn't counted on Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez and her squad of human fighters. They streaked after Thax's ship, their engines burning hot. "Target their engines," Rodriguez ordered her squad. "Disable, don't destroy. We want him alive." Their precision fire crippled Thax's ship, leaving it dead in space. As Rodriguez's team moved into board, the battle around them continued to rage. The once certain Zorn victory had transformed into a fight for survival, with the fate of the Deltan Confederation and the balance of power in the galaxy hanging in the balance. Balance. As the battle raged on, Captain David Ramos found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The arrival of the Earth fleet had shifted the momentum, but victory was far from assured. He quickly established a secure comm link with Admiral Chen, who was leading the reinforcements. "Admiral, we need to coordinate our efforts," Ramos said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I propose a pincer movement against the Zorn Armada." Chen's holographic image nodded sharply. "Agreed. Our ships are equipped with the latest warp technology. We can perform rapid micro-jumps to outmaneuver their vessels." Ramos turned to his tactical officer. "Relay new orders to the Deltan fleet. Tell them to provide heavy firepower support while our ships execute the micro-jumps. The space around them erupted into a dazzling display of precision maneuvers. Human ships blinked in and out of existence, appearing at the Zorn's flanks and unleashing devastating volleys before vanishing again. The Deltan cruisers, their crescent formation now reformed, hammered the Zorn with relentless barrages of energy weapons. On the bridge of the Defiant, Ramos watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. The Zorn fleet, once an unstoppable juggernaut, was now struggling to maintain cohesion. His moment of triumph was short-lived. A priority alert flashed across his console. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving distress signals from the surface. Zorn ground forces are beginning a full-scale invasion of the Deltan homeworld." Ramos's lips pursed. He knew the Zorn must have deployed their forces before the tide of the space battle had turned. Now, they were committed to a ground war. "Get me Sergeant Harper," he ordered. Harper's face appeared on the interface, his features etched with grime and persistence. "Sir, we've got a situation down here. Zorn dropships are landing all over the planet." "I know, Sergeant. I need you to shift your focus. Organize a planetary defense, set up a command center in the capital, and coordinate with the local Deltan militia." Harper nodded sharply. "Understood, sir. We'll hold the line." As Ramos turned his attention back to the space battle, he saw Admiral Ora's face appear on another view screen. "Captain," she said, her voice filled with renewed vigor, "I have a plan to use our wormhole network for planetary defense. I'm ordering several ships to key points around the planet. We'll use the network to rapidly respond to Zorn landing zones." Ramos nodded in approval. "Excellent strategy, Admiral. We'll provide whatever support we can from up here." As the battle raged on multiple fronts, Chief Engineer Sarah Chen's voice came over the comm. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough. I think I can use the Defiance warp core to enhance the stability of the wormhole network. It could significantly increase its range and capacity." Ramos felt a surge of hope. "Do it, Chief. This could be the advantage we need." As Chen worked her magic in engineering, the tactical situation continued to evolve. The Zorn's Supreme Commander, realizing his carefully laid plans were unraveling, made an audacious attempt. "Sir," Ramos's tactical officer called out, "the Zorn flagship is breaking through our lines. They're making a run for the Deltan capital." Ramos's eyes narrowed. He understood the Zorn commander's plan immediately. A direct assault on the planet's leadership to force a surrender. "Not on my watch," Ramos muttered. "Helm, set an intercept course. We're going to engage that flagship." The Defiant surged forward, its engines pushing to maximum output. As they closed in on the massive Zorn vessel, Ramos felt a mix of anticipation and dread. This would be the fight of his life. "All hands battle stations," he called out. "Weapons, target their propulsion systems. Let's clip their wings." The two ships engaged in a high-stakes duel, weaving through the chaos of the larger battle. The Defiant's superior maneuverability allowed it to dance around the larger Zorn vessel, but each hit from the alien ship's weapons sent shudders through the human craft. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Harper led his team through the streets of the Deltan capital. They had just finished setting up a makeshift command center when alerts blared across their comms. "Zorn strike force detected," a Deltan officer reported. "They're heading for the planetary defense grid's main control center." Harper's blood ran cold. If the Zorn took out that facility, the entire planet would be vulnerable to orbital bombardment. "Alpha Team, with me," he barked. "The rest of you, coordinate with the Deltan militia. We need to hold this city at all cost." As Harper's small squad raced towards the control center, they could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the city. Zorn dropships roared overhead, while Deltan anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky. They arrived at the control center to find it under heavy assault. A group of Zorn soldiers, led by a familiar face, one of Commander Kraz's surviving lieutenants, were attempting to breach the facility's defenses. "All right, people," Harper said, his voice low and intense. "This is it. We hold this line no matter what. For the Deltans, for Earth, for everyone counting on us. Let's show these Zorn bastards what we're made of." With that, Harper and his team charged into the fray. The narrow corridors of the control center erupted into a chaotic melee of energy weapons fire and hand-to-hand combat. The human Marines' adaptability and close-quarters combat skills proved crucial in the confined spaces. As Harper grappled with a Zorn soldier twice his size, he caught glimpses of the battle raging outside through shattered windows. Deltan and human ships darted through the sky, engaging Zorn vessels in a deadly dance of fire and maneuver. In orbit, the Defiant continued its duel with the Zorn flagship. Captain Ramos gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. "Shields at 30%, his tactical officer reported. "We can't take much more of this, sir." Ramos's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then he saw it, a gap in the Zorn flagship's defenses, exposed for just a moment as it turned to bring its main guns to bear. "All power to forward weapons," he ordered. "Target that weak point and fire everything we've got." The Defiant's weapons blazed to life, pouring energy into the Zorn ship's exposed flank. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then explosions began to ripple across the alien vessel's hull. As the Zorn flagship began to list, its engines sputtering and dying, Ramos allowed himself a small smile. But he knew the battle was just the beginning. The Zorn Supreme Commander, cornered and desperate, would not go down without a fight. In the Deltan capital's Defense Control Center, Harper and his team had finally gained the upper hand. The last of the Zorn attackers fell, leaving the facility secure but heavily damaged. "Status report," Harper barked, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. "Defense grid is holding, sir," one of his Marines reported, "but we're detecting a massive energy buildup in the Zorn fleet. They're preparing for something big." Harper's comm crackled to life, and Captain Ramos's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Sergeant, we've pushed the Zorn to their breaking point, but their Supreme Commander is preparing a final counterattack. Whatever it is, it could undo everything we've accomplished. We need you to—" The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Harper and his team staring at each other in grim silence. They knew that whatever came next would decide the fate of not just this battle, but potentially the entire war. With renewed perseverance, they began to prepare for the Zorn's final, desperate assault. The tension in the air was palpable as Harper and his team braced themselves for whatever the Zorn had planned. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the control center. A Deltan technician's eyes widened as he studied the readouts on his console. "Energy spike detected in orbit. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Harper's comm crackled to life again, Captain Ramos's voice cutting through the static. "Sergeant, we've got a situation up here. The Zorn Supreme Commander has activated some kind of superweapon. We're detecting an antimatter buildup that could vaporize the entire fleet." "Roger that, Captain," Harper replied, his mind racing. "What's our play?" "We're moving to intercept," Ramos said, his voice tense but determined. "But we need you to hold the line down there. We can't let the Zorn gain control of the planetary defenses, no matter what." As if on cue, Harper's team picked up a new transmission. One of his lieutenants decrypted it quickly, her face paling as she relayed the contents. "Sir, Zorn ground forces are en route to a hidden backup control facility. If they take it, they can shut down the planet's defenses remotely." Harper's eyes sharp. They'd repelled the attack on the main control center, but this new threat could undo everything they'd fought for. "All right, people, we're moving out. We need to reach that backup facility before the Zorn do." As Harper's team rushed through the war-torn streets of the Deltan capital, the battle in orbit reached a fever pitch. The Defiant disengaged from its duel with the Zorn flagship, its engines straining as Captain Ramos positioned the ship directly in the path of the charging antimatter cannon. "All power to the warp drive," Ramos ordered, his fingers tightening as he gripped his command chair. "Chen, I need that wormhole generator at maximum capacity." In engineering, Chief Engineer Sarah Chen worked furiously, her hands flying over the controls as she pushed the Defiant systems to their limits. "Captain, I'm modifying the warp core to enhance our wormhole generating capabilities. It'll give us a larger, more stable wormhole, but we risk burning out the engines completely." "Do it," Ramos said without hesitation. "If we don't stop that cannon, there won't be any engines left to worry about." As the Defiant prepared for its bold strategy, Admiral Chen coordinated with Admiral Aura, launching a massive offensive against the Zorn fleet. Human ships darted between the lumbering Zorn vessels, their superior maneuverability creating gaps in the enemy formation. The Deltan warships followed in their wake, unleashing devastating volleys that pushed the Zorn to the brink of collapse. On the planet's surface, Harper and his team raced against time. They could hear the sounds of Zorn dropships in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. As they approached the backup facility, they saw the first wave of Zorn troops touching down. "Take cover!" Harper shouted as energy bolts sizzled through the air. His team scattered, using the rubble-strewn landscape for protection as they returned fire. The battle for the backup facility erupted into a fierce firefight. Harper's human Deltan squad utilized their urban warfare training, using the narrow corridors and tight spaces to their advantage. But the Zorn force was larger, and they pressed their attack relentlessly. In orbit, the moment of truth arrived. The Zorn antimatter cannon reached full charge, its energy signature blazing across every sensor in the system. Captain Ramos took a deep breath, then gave the order. "Activate the warp drive. Now!" The Defiant's engines howled in protest as they generated a massive wormhole directly in front of the ship. The Zorn flagship fired its superweapon, a blinding beam of destructive energy hurtling towards the Allied fleet. At the last possible second, the beam entered the wormhole, disappearing from view. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then sensors lit up as the antimatter beam re-emerged from another wormhole directly behind the Zorn fleet. The Zorn's supreme commander could only watch in horror as his own superweapon tore through his remaining ships, vaporizing a significant portion of his fleet in seconds. Taking advantage of the chaos, Admiral Chen issued a daring order. "All ships engage warp drives simultaneously. Create a network of micro-wormholes throughout the battlefield." The human fleet responded instantly, their warp drives activating in perfect synchronization. The space around the battling fleets became a dizzying maze of micro-wormholes, allowing the Allied forces to strike from unexpected angles and retreat before the Zorn could respond. As the tide of the space battle turned decisively, Harper and his team found themselves in an increasingly desperate situation. They had managed to secure the main control room of the backup facility, but Zorn forces were pressing in from all sides. "We're running low on ammo," one of Harper's Marines reported, his voice tight with tension, "and I don't know how much longer we can hold this position." Harper gritted his teeth, scanning the room for anything they could use to their advantage. "We hold this line," he said firmly. "No matter what, the entire planet's defense grid depends on it." Just then, Harper's comm crackled to life. It was Captain Ramos, his voice strained but triumphant. "Sergeant, we've turned the tide up here. The Zorn fleet is in disarray. How are you holding up?" "We're hanging on by a thread, Captain," Harper replied, ducking as another volley of Zorn fire peppered their position. "But we won't let this facility fall, not while we're still breathing." As Harper and his team prepared for another wave of Zorn attackers, the battle in space entered its final, chaotic phase. The once mighty Zorn fleet was now a scattered, disorganized mess, easy prey for the coordinated human Deltan assault. But even in defeat, the Zorn Supreme Commander had one last card to play. His damaged flagship, no longer capable of fighting, began to move. Its trajectory became clear, a suicidal ramming attack aimed directly at the Deltan capital city. Captain Ramos, aboard the now powerless Defiant, watched helplessly as the Zorn flagship plummeted towards the planet. The fate of the Deltan homeworld, and perhaps the entire war, now hung in the balance. As Allied ships raced to intercept the plunging Zorn vessel, Ramos could only hope that their efforts and the sacrifices of countless brave souls would be enough to secure victory. Victory. As Allied ships raced to intercept the plunging Zorn vessel, Ramos could only watch helplessly as his own ship, the Defiant, drifted powerless in space. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir, we've got incoming!" the tactical officer shouted. "A group of Zorn destroyers have broken off from the main fleet. They're heading straight for us." Ramos gritted his teeth. With no power, they were sitting ducks. He opened his mouth to give the order to abandon ship when a new voice crackled over the comms. "This is Squadron Leader Zara of the Deltan Defense Force. Hold tight, Defiant. We've got your back." A swarm of sleek Deltan fighters swept past the view screen, their engines blazing as they engaged the approaching Zorn destroyers. Ramos watched in awe as the Deltan ships executed a series of precise micro-jumps, appearing and disappearing around the Zorn vessels in a dizzying dance. "They're using our tactics," Ramos murmured, a hint of pride in his voice. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Harper and his team were facing their own desperate situation. Pinned down in the backup control facility, they could hear the Zorn forces getting closer with each passing second. "We're almost out of ammo," one of his Marines reported, ejecting an empty energy cell from his rifle. Harper's mind raced. They couldn't let the Zorn take control of the facility, but they were rapidly running out of options. Then his eyes fell on the facility's power core. "I've got an idea," he said, his voice tight with tenacity. "But it's risky as hell." He quickly outlined his plan to the team. They would overload the power core, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse. It would fry their own equipment, but it would also disable the Zorn's energy weapons and communication devices. As the sound of Zorn weapons fire grew louder, Harper's team worked feverishly to rig the power core. Just as the facility's final defenses fell, Harper activated the overload. A blinding flash of light filled the room, followed by an eerie silence. When Harper's vision cleared, he saw the Zorn soldiers stumbling into the room, their energy rifles sparking uselessly in their hands. "Now!" Harper shouted, drawing his combat knife. His team surged forward, engaging the disoriented Zorn in close-quarters combat. The narrow corridors of the facility erupted into a brutal melee. Harper ducked under a Zorn soldier's wild swing, driving his knife into a weak point in the alien's armor. Beside him, a Deltan member of his team executed a lightning-fast series of strikes, dropping 2 Zorn warriors in quick succession. Inspired by the humans' tenacity, the Deltan soldiers fought with renewed vigor. Together, they pushed the Zorn back, slowly but surely reclaiming the facility. In orbit, the Zorn Supreme Commander's damaged flagship continued its suicidal plunge towards the Deltan capital. Admiral Chen's voice rang out across the comms, coordinating the desperate defense. "All ships form up on the Terran Vanguard," Chen ordered. "We're going to use the wormhole network to board that ship." The Terran Vanguard positioned itself between the Zorn flagship and the planet. As it neared the plummeting vessel, Chen gave the order. "Activate wormhole generators. Boarding parties, stand by for rapid deployment." Small wormholes flickered into existence around the Zorn ship. Through each one, a team of human and Deltan special forces materialized, immediately engaging the Zorn crew in fierce firefights. Commander Michael Torres led one of these teams, fighting their way through the alien vessel's winding corridors. "Push forward," he shouted over the din of battle. "We need to reach the bridge." As they neared the command center, resistance intensified. Torres ducked behind a bulkhead as a barrage of Zorn fire filled the corridor. "Cover me!" he called out, then sprinted forward, firing his rifle in short, controlled bursts. With a well-placed grenade, Torres's team breached the bridge. As the smoke cleared, they found themselves face-to-face with Supreme Commander Krell himself. The massive Zorn leader snarled, his hand moving towards a console. "He's going for the self-destruct," one of Torres's team shouted. Without hesitation, Torres lunged forward. He tackled Krell, driving the alien away from the controls. The two grappled fiercely, Torres's superior close-quarters combat training allowing him to match the Zorn's brute strength. With a series of swift, precise strikes, Torres managed to throw Krell off balance. He followed up with a devastating combination, ending with a powerful blow that sent the Zorn commander crashing to the deck. As Krell fell unconscious, Torres's team secured the bridge. "Command, this is Torres," he reported, breathing heavily. "We've neutralized Supreme Commander Krell and taken control of the flagship." A cheer went up across the combined human Deltan fleet as the news spread. With their leadership captured and their fleet in disarray, the remaining Zorn ships began to power down their weapons, signaling their surrender. As the Terran Vanguard moved to assist the powerless Defiant, Captain Ramos looked out at the battered but victorious fleet. The cost had been high, but they had done it. Together, humans and Deltans had faced down one of the greatest threats in the galaxy and emerged triumphant. Ramos allowed himself a small smile as he saw the Deltan fighters escorting his ship to safety. Whatever came next, he knew that humanity had proven itself. They were no longer the laughingstock of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and more importantly, they were no longer alone. As the Defiant was brought into the Terran Vanguard's hangar bay, Ramos straightened his uniform. There would be time for rest and celebration later. For now, there was still work to be done. The war might be over, but the real challenge, building a lasting peace, was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.